Okay, welcome everyone to today's presentation, Many Hands, Lighter Work, Secret Service in the Craft. I have been really excited to present this one. It's been a little while since I've done a lecture slash lesson like this with you all, I think. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I am presenting from today, the land of the Wurundjeri Wurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. Feel free to pop any questions in the chat as we go along, and I can, if they're relevant sort of like in the moment, I'll answer them then, or we can save them for the end as well. But yeah, this presentation is all about showing or showcasing ancient roles within communities, such as the ones we're featuring today that I'll go over in a moment, and seeing how they can inspire the ways we can provide service to our communities and our gods in the modern day and in the modern craft. And I kind of look at, or I try to look at magical, spiritual, mental, and physical dimensions of community, and even things like advocacy and social impact. And as I wrote in the event description, if you've ever asked yourself, what can I do as one person, or you feel drawn to sacred service and community healing, this lecture should hopefully provide you some stepping stones for considering that. Because I believe that to be of service to the gods or your community, you don't need to know everything or be an expert at everything. We all have things that we are passionate about and skilled at that we can cultivate in this framework. Here's a little bit about me. You may know me already, but I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Quinton Lee or Quinn. My pronouns are they, them. I am a witch, Hellenic polytheist, Kemeticist, angelic spirit worker, and folk practitioner. My craft engages with the divinatory arts, trance work, healing work, realm walking, and devotion. I'm a writer, anthology curator, speaker, facilitator of sacred space and events, and a counselor. Above all, I serve my gods and the people around me, especially those who share community with me as a LGBTQIA+ and neurodivergent person of color. So this presentation is a bit of a conversation about service, and these are some questions I sort of want to ask you guys, and you don't have to answer it now, but I invite you to sort of reflect on these questions and see where you start coming into this presentation. What is service? Who can serve the gods? Who can serve our communities? And a big question, what is your relationship with service? And what I mean by that is sort of like, how do you define it? And what does it look like to you? What do you expect of yourself and others when it comes to service? An overview of the roles we'll be exploring together today. Scribe, healer, priest slash priestess slash priestess, oracle, musician, and artisan. We'll discuss how these roles appeared in ancient societies around the world, with some references to modern living traditions, and how they emerge in modern service and devotion. So let's get right into it. We're going to talk about scribes first. What is a scribe? Scribes were involved at administrative, intellectual, and religious levels of society. Broadly, they were in charge of making copies of manuscripts, taking dictations, and keeping records. And for each of these roles, I've put a bit of an overview of a few different ancient roles slash modern roles where, we can see, for example, in this one, scribes, what they did. So in ancient Egypt, scribes studied in libraries, documented economic activities, recorded stories, and collaborated with painters and artisans to create reliefs on temples and buildings. In ancient China, scribes produced books, were part of the government, transcribed religious texts, and honed their writing skills. During the Middle Ages, in Anglo-Saxon England, some women in monasteries acted as scribes by writing and copying ritual scripts and prayers. So scribes were engaged with the written word and language, the ability to learn and share information, to preserve cultural stories, societal documents, and religious texts and literature. Scribes could vary in rank, but across many cultures held status. And by status, I mean like a high status. They were in high regard. I have a couple images here. We have an Egyptian limestone relief of scribes, and also this Japanese portrait of Fujiwara no Teika, a poet, scribe, and book collector. And for each of these roles, I spoke with a few people who I would either call them this role or they identify personally with this role. And so I thought it was a good way to highlight members of our community and how they see these roles. So Akret shared with us that being a scribe started off as a curiosity. As I dove in, it grew into a passion that helped me know more about my deities on a deeper level. They don't know me at the surface level, and I want to know more than just the surface with them. As I learn more, I can become part of the larger conversation, and even that helps me learn more about the culture, the language, the history, the religion of ancient Egypt, and so much more in between. It allows me to be active in the community and to help people either with information or showing them where they should look. How might someone serve as a scribe in the modern day? I have this list of ideas, perhaps. So devoting your role as a librarian, archivist, writer, scholar, or similar to service and creating social impact through these jobs. There are also roles that have the word scribe or like sort of similar words in their title, such as medical scribe, legal scribe, transcriptionist, ghostwriter, or note taker. You may dedicate efforts to compiling resources about one's gods or your gods, culture, and or religion to create accessibility around learning and sharing knowledge, especially in academic fields. This might be through curating resource libraries, creating videos or blog posts to share information in an accessible manner, and exploring existing collections of works in museums and libraries. Acting as a scribe for your community /coven/cultus by recording ritual scripts, writing prayers, producing print content, and or doing secretarial work, just like the ancient scribes did. You may develop specific scribing skills such as typing, handwriting, shorthand writing, and you can learn more about how you manage to store your writing, make neat notes, and also the ethical dimension to it in terms of if you're scribing things related to people and their personal experiences, how might you ethically or respectfully engage with that information? How do you share it? How do you credit it? How do you ensure that you're not, for example, overriding other people's voices? And also writing about your craft and experiences. Write about your research. You don't need to be a scribe by occupation to do this. You may simply have a passion for writing and language. So on the right here, I have this image of a Roman funerary altar depicting public scribes assisting magistrates. And also, I found this was a funny image. Titivilus, a demon said to introduce errors into the work of scribes, besets a scribe at his desk, and it's from the 14th century, so that's a little funny one. Next, we have healers. What is a healer? The designation of healer is broad and encompasses healing across physical, mental, spiritual, and social dimensions. They're part of our healthcare systems, rituals and ceremonies, in the space between two individuals, in nature and sacred places, and more. Across cultures and folk traditions, healers have served their communities using traditional practices and herbal remedies. Historical women played a large part in providing healing for pregnancy, childbirth, children, and their families. Healing also comes in the form of lifting curses, such as this practice known by the cunning folk in the Middle Ages and in the modern day. In some ways, oracular work intersects with healing. For example, the Korean ritual specialist, the Mudang, acting as a spirit medium for healing. Divination, trance, and possession are utilized as a means of diagnosis across many living cultures. In ancient Egypt, groups of physicians worked out of houses of life, known as per'ankh, which were linked to temples and facilitated healing and learning. They provided physical treatments, plant-based treatments, and combined medicine with spells. I have this picture, this diorama of a cunning woman in the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic, and also this artwork of a mudang by Shin Yungbok, which is currently in the Museum of Art in Seoul. For this quote, I have one for myself. So, my role as a counselor expands beyond just my studies or a 9-to-5 occupation. I believe my learning, skills, and values as a counselor permeate everything I do for my community and gods. Counseling has been an important skill for many ancient healers across the world, and I'm honored to be part of this healing tradition. How might someone serve as a healer in the modern day? Many people already do, and the role of a healer has remained unbroken across the world. Devoting roles in healthcare such as doctor, dentist, nurse, psychologist, psychiatrist, pharmacist, and allied health professions. Devoting roles in alternative medicine such as acupuncturist, Chinese medicine practitioner, remedial massage therapist, Reiki healer, and more. You may engage with medical or healing-based research. You may learn your culture's traditions of healing and preserve these learnings. You may expand your understanding of what healing means through a decolonial lens. Learning about the healing traditions of ancient traditions, or religions, sharing knowledge and reconstructing practices, in a safe manner, of course, and connecting with the way that your healing emerges through your craft and life, because not all healing looks the same. On the right here, we have the first image, an ancient Egyptian sort of inscription depicting medical instruments from the Ptolemaic period. And also on the right here, a Qing dynasty illustration of Hua Tuo, a Chinese physician who lived during the late Eastern Han dynasty. This one's a fun one, priest, priestess, and priestess. I think this is an interesting one to dive into because sort of part of this, like the point of this presentation is to show that you may not need a title or some specific community role in order to provide service. I do think service can be exclusive from a specific title because, well, in my conclusion, I will say, but basically everyone has the capacity for it, even if you don't have a specific role. But I do think it's important to highlight this role, especially in this context and lens through paganism and witchcraft. The role of a priest in the context of ancient religion and living tradition is or may be different from how we may know priests in Christianity, which, at least here in the so-called Western world, a lot of us come from the background of Christianity or Catholicism. So in ancient Greece, priests served as ritual and sacrifice specialists rather than pastoral leaders. In ancient Egypt, priests served to maintain divine order on behalf of the pharaoh through the precise execution of daily rituals in temples. From the perspective of classical Greek and Roman writers, because of the material that we do have access to, ancient druids are associated with performing sacrifices, guiding rites, and law-keeping, which can be interpreted as priestly. Although the order of bards, ovates, and druids say, we tend to think of the druid as a sort of priest, but this is not borne out of evidence or borne out by the evidence. The classical texts refer to them more as philosophers than priests. So the duties we associate even with pagan priesthood may or may not be referred to as priesthood. There is a common thread of service through ritual and performing a sacred duty in alignment with mythos or seasonal law. So in the context of ancient Greece, for example, based on the calendar, which is a seasonal calendar and can sometimes be informed by myth. For the images, we have Myths and Legends, The Celtic Race by Thomas William Rolleston, and also a relief of a priestess of Hathor, Edie in the tomb of her father, Jephi Hapi I. I spoke to Zandra, who is a priestess or training to be a priestess, and she says to be a priestess means to take on characteristics that facilitate deep understanding. It's a role of caring and tending not only the gods, but also those who wish to know them. It is a lifelong pursuit of knowledge not found only in books, but in the living world around us. How might someone serve as a priest slash priestess slash priestess? Do we need priests for pagan religions? What does a priestess do? How does a priestess become qualified? All questions we may ask, and this all depends on how you define the role, how it is reconstructed, what needs need to be met, and the responsibility of those who adopt the duties, even if not the specific title. There is no generic or centralized view of priesthood across many contexts that we are coming at it from with pagan religions and in witchcraft, but here are some ideas of how priesthood may appear in the modern day as ways to serve the gods and your communities. Engaging in prayer, devotional practice, offerings and sacrifice, mediation, teaching, counseling, and/or organizing in a consistent and deep manner. Sometimes the work is not easy to explain or may even use multiple terms and titles, but it is undeniably an act of service for your deities and the world around you, and perhaps something that resonates with priesthood to you. You may naturally inherit roles of priestly service in your coven, community, or cultus that brings you to a sworn devotional path. You could also consider any of the other roles in this presentation as a form of specialized priesthood, especially if you're looking at it from a specific ancient cultural lens where they did actually consider the role as a form of priesthood. On the right here, we have a 2nd century CE Attic relief plaque showing a priest and priestess performing a religious ritual. Oracles. The role of oracle is known by many names, such as seer, vulva, sibyl, mantis, medium, channel, herald, and more. Some were not named by title as well. Oracles could describe a person, object, or location that was sought for insight, wise counsel, and fortune or future telling. This was accomplished in a variety of ways, such as communicating with the dead and various spirits, possession by gods, using lot drawing and other methods of divination, and engaging in spirit flight. Some of these roles have been reconstructed from ancient positions in the modern day. Some still continue as ancestral traditions. Ancient Greece is famous for the Pythia, an oracular priestess of Apollo at Delphi. The Ovates, which is a role of druidry, as shared by the order of bards, ovates and druids, then and now are considered diviners and seers who travel through time and perform prophecy and divination. The cults of Asclepius and Serapis facilitated sleep incubation for healing and to receive dream oracles. And priests in these cults may have helped with interpreting these dream oracles too. The image we have is Aegeus at right consulting the Pythia, or Oracle of Delphi. I spoke with 2 practitioners in terms of their experiences as oracles. So this first one is from my friend and colleague Polixena, and she says, I am a Greco-Comedic polytheist, and my oracular work is part of my devotion to Kore, Persephone, and the Unseen One. Seeking to revive the oracular traditions of the ancient Greek oracles of the dead, I am a practicing evidential medium. It is such an honor and a joy to be a messenger between the seen and the unseen, to connect people with their loved ones and to bring love and healing through messages. I am likewise a devotee of Demeter and Orset, the latter of whom I feel called to serve in some sort of oracular capacity. I also study and practice Hellenistic astrology and dedicate that practice to Orset and Hermes. How might someone serve as an oracle in the modern day? You may dedicate yourself to the divinatory arts, learning about the history of your divination methods, getting to know the spirits of your tools, learning from other diviners, and lots of practice. Practice. Considering what it means to be an oracle and embody these values today. For example, holding sacred space, cultivating intuition, helping others to interpret signs from the gods, providing insight while respecting the autonomy of the querent. You may reconstruct ancient oracular roles, rites, and practices aligned with your devotions, and provide your services to your coven, community, or cultus. In terms of reconstructing and expanding this idea of oracular work, you may look into mystery practices, trance work, possession, mediumship, spirit work, and more. If a certain oracular role intrigues you, diving into the role's cultural context, duties, and how practitioners may already be reconstructing these roles. Not all oracles are the same. and devoting your role as a tarot reader, medium, or some other occupational role you may hold. The second quote is from our lovely Nico, Day Sleeper, and Nico shared that or I'll read the quote. I consider myself a mantis, and I train my skills in service to Hermes. I consider his multifaceted nature aspirational and seek to be as multifaceted in the styles of divination I can perform. I also dedicate my learning of the astragaloi to Dionysus for personal reasons specific to my practice. The images we have here, so on the left side we have the Temples and Cult of Asclepius by artist Robert Thom, and also a sculpture of the Germanic seeress Villida by Hippolyte Maindron. Musicians. What is a musician? Well, the role of a musician is not limited really to ancient societies. Musicians have existed for centuries and very much continue to. Some might say, and I do say, that music is a very human creation that is everlasting. Though musicians have also held specific religious and community roles in the past. In ancient Egypt, temples had priests and priestesses dedicated to chanting, singing, playing instruments, and dancing. In ancient Greece, music was a key part of the experience for ecstatic mystery cults. Instruments like the aulos, a double reed wind instrument, tympanon, frame drum, cymbals, and even clashing swords against shields were used to connect with the gods as a group of worshippers. Hymns exist among many cultures and religions back then and now. Some of us may know them as poems we read, though hymns were and are songs that can be sung too. They accompany processions, the opening and closing of rituals, and important points during ritual. For the images, on the left we have lutes and double pipe players and female dancers from a mural found in the Theban tomb of Nebamun, so an ancient Egyptian depiction. And also we have this depiction of an ancient Greek woman or Athena playing the aulos. I spoke to Elwin, our lovely Ellie, about what their experience is with the role of musician, and they shared that sacred musicians use their gifts to change the world around them. As an orchestra teacher, I offer young musicians a space to take risks that help them connect with their passions and each other. A space filled with the sounds of freedom that mimic the historical worship of Cybele, the worship to whom I dedicate this work. How might someone serve as a musician in the modern day? They may devote roles such as musician of any kind, music teacher, audio engineer and producer, artist manager, songwriter, really any role associated with making music or helping others to make music. You may study the importance of music and adjacent topics like dancing, singing, and chanting. In ancient and modern religion, specialties may emerge from this, such as music being used for purification and pacification in an ancient Egyptian context, or sacred dramas and performances as devotion and entertainment, which is found in many cultures. You may learn about how ancient music was made, including their instruments, scales, rhythms, and how myth and lore were incorporated. You may study language to sing songs in their untranslated forms or to reconstruct/translate songs. You may perform live for rituals and ceremonies, produce music for the gods and your coven/community/cultists, or preserve stories through music. The art we have here on the left is a piece called The Bard by Benjamin West, and we also have an ancient relief of a woman holding a sistrum, so an ancient Egyptian depiction again. As a secondary quote, I spoke to Siamun, who is, I would like to say, known in the Kemetic community for performing ancient Egyptian hymns, reconstructing hymns in various ancient Egyptian languages, and recording them to share with the community. I personally really love their work, and they share that being a musician allows me to express devotion and love in a way unique to my abilities. By employing the skills I already have, I'm able to create something that makes me feel more fulfilled than anything else in the world. And we have artisans, last but not least. Similarly to musicians, artisans have not disappeared with time. Even in our age of modern technology and machinery, we have not lost our desire for skillfully crafted, practical, and decorative items. Many artisans work with manual methods and tools, producing limited bespoke items rather than mass productions. Many follow techniques passed through generations or from mentors and teachers. In ancient Mesopotamia, artisans created pottery, gold and silver jewelry, ivory figurines, and woven textiles. Many artisans were exclusively temple workers. In ancient China, artisans had their own categorization of occupation, the gong. One of their roles was carving precious jade, which is believed to have spiritual or magical properties. So this was the case and still is the case. In ancient Egypt, similarly to ancient Mesopotamia, there were groups of artisans dedicated to temple work. There were painters, metal workers, weavers, stonemasons, and more. We have a couple art pieces here. On the left, a Ming-era pottery workshop depiction. And on the right, we have a relief of the goddess Ishtar on an Akkadian Empire seal. I spoke with a good friend and colleague of mine, Kineras, who is an artisan. And they share that being an artisan gives me a way to show my love and gratitude for the gods through tangible gestures. Through hard work and skill, I can give them back a fraction of what they give to me. This allows me to serve my communities by crafting them sacred or blessed items, made with love, respect, and honor for each piece's history and religious significance. Each of these pieces are unique, representing aspects of the gods or devotional practice that might not always be found elsewhere. My work is by a polytheist for polytheists, responding to our specific needs as a broader community. How might someone serve as an artisan in the modern day? You may devote roles such as carpenter, jeweler, seamstress, sculptor, fashion designer, woodworker, painter, and more. I would say even the culinary arts count under artisan. Food brings people together, and food offerings are so common across cultures. Even if not by occupation, many people create devotional items and art pieces to express visions and experiences with and of the gods, and I think that is incredibly meaningful. You could create statues or icons as decorations and for ritual use, or perhaps other items that are used in ritual. Symbols crafted out of natural materials, for example, tools like instruments and libation vessels. Artisans create divination tools too. Your artistic creations may contribute to your coven/community/cultus during events, on altars, for various members and devotees looking for specialized creations. You may adorn statues as the ancient stolists once did. You may also teach others how to create their own art, ritual objects, and decorative items for their deity's devotion or craft. On the right here, we have a statue of Apollo Belvedere, I don't know how to say that, but Belvedere, by Greek sculptor Leocharis, and a stela of the steward Mentuoso on the right. I just thought it'd be cool to show these creations because, as polytheists, pagans, witches, we see a lot of, these ancient depictions of the gods and various individuals and people. And it's just like, we can be reminded that these were made by actual human people. And people made these hundreds, thousands of years ago. And nowadays, we do also make things like this too for our gods. Conclusion. So once again, I ask you the questions I asked at the start. What is service? Who can serve the gods? Who can serve our communities? What is your relationship with service? And I invite you, if you wish, to write in the chat what your answers are, if they changed from the start of the presentation to the end of the presentation, or if you want to just answer one question. I'm particularly interested in the last one. What is your relationship with service? If anyone wants to share their thoughts. And yeah, if you want to do that, you can do that, and I'll read the rest of this conclusion. So for me, I think service is not about knowing everything or doing everything. I think it's about playing to your strengths, following your calling, participating within a community. All of these roles that we talked about today are integral to our craft and religious practices. What roles do you feel inspired to explore now? Whether they're ones included here or ones that you thought about while we talked about these 6 roles. Does anything stand out to you? Does anything resonate already? Maybe there's something you're already doing that you maybe didn't feel as confident putting a word to or didn't really think of as service, but actually could be considered a form of service. Not everyone needs to call what they do service by that word, and participating in a role of service can be a very natural, non-status based part of our lives in devotion. But also, a very important part of this presentation is sharing that everyone has the potential to share their talents, skills, and passions with the gods and the communities as a form of sacred service. So please never discount yourself thinking that you're just one person, or that you need to know everything, or that if you don't have a certain form of status, that you can't do something or, contribute. All of us are part of a community and take part in community and can, even change the lives of a few people. It's, an incredible thing that we are capable of. And last line, your service can be temporary or lifelong. It can change over time. I think that is a strong thing I want to share too, because it's like this presentation was all about looking at roles that existed in ancient society and seeing how they still exist and emerge now. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, the way we can see history, historical societies, ancient religion, and look at each other now and see the echoes of these traditions or skills, talents, passions that, ripple through time. So whether you're looking at it just within your own lifetime, how things change and shift, or even in the broader timeline of thousands of years ago to now, time is a very cool thing that reveals the strength of service and community work. So before I have a look at the messages in the chat from what was shared about service, this is my last slide. I'd like to say thank you for listening to my presentation. It was really wonderful to share this with you, and I hope it was really informative and inspiring. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and we can do a bit of Q&A if you wish for this too. But yeah, you could find me online. There's my link tree there if you want to scan it. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. I have a website. You could email me, but really we're on Discord, so you can message me on Discord or ask to message me on Discord if you want to talk about anything. I'd like to thank all of my community members who contributed to this presentation and offered their wonderful insights around their certain roles. So Akret for their insight on scribes. I would like to thank Xandra for sharing about being a priestess, Polixena and Nico for sharing about their oracular work, Elle and Siamon for sharing about being a musician, and to Kineras for sharing their work as an artisan. And I extend my thanks to the scribes, healers, priests, priestesses, and priestesses, oracles, musicians, and artisans, that and who came before us, and also to the ones who serve us now. Thanks for the claps. So Nico, you shared that for you, service means following your intuition and earnestly serving both you and your community. Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a very succinct but accurate way to describe service. Gwen, you shared that you think this honestly made you realize a path with Hades now. So you're connecting the dots. That's really exciting. Demetra, you shared that this made me think of two things you'd like to do. You have a question. Do oracles have to serve a deity or can they just serve their community? I think from my experience and from, the network I'm involved with, the people I know and speak to, and my own practice, it's kind of like both. I think it's very possible to, for example, take on a role as an oracle within a community context, and it may the community itself may not be dedicated to only one deity, such as how this server is, but like other covens, communities, and cults, they may be more broader, and you may be someone who really dedicates yourself to the study of divination and oracular work, and it's something that you provide service to your to the people. So that's like you're serving your community. But I think as well, especially in the context of what we're talking about today, a lot of people dedicate this path of oracularship or seership or other titles and roles to specific deities and within the context of certain religions. So, for example, a mantis is someone who would operate in the framework of ancient Greek divination. And so it kind of makes sense if they would serve a deity who is of the ancient Greek pantheon. And that's sort of like a deep relationship they have for expanding and extending their path. Some of the other titles that were mentioned are specific to certain cultural contexts. And so they may, yes, again, dedicate to a specific deity as a guide and as a form of inspiration. But there are many people who identify with titles such as like seer and channel and medium who do not have a specific devotion, and that is just a role that they take part in. And they may or may not be pagan, but they may be a witch or they may be spiritual, and it can be like quite different. So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Rue. So you said that you definitely think using one's natural skills, intuition, and calling in life is a great way to approach service. Personally, you felt drawn from a young age towards mediumship, mental health, and philanthropy, which led you to being involved in community service work such as charities, aged care, homelessness, mental health, etc., which inevitably led you to psychotherapy and eventually ordainship into metaphysical ministerial work. You're on the path of becoming a death doula to support people at the end of their life and to utilize your healing, your energy healing, and spiritual work to help wherever you can. You also see this work as a way to honor your gods, which I think is beautiful and very perfect for you. And I think that's a very much needed way that we can serve our gods and communities. I didn't talk a lot about like my service really at the start, except for a few lines. One, and mainly because I didn't know how long this presentation would take, so I was making sure I was getting right into the thick of the content. But yeah, we have a bit of time, so yeah. For myself, I kind of have a mix of like the ways I adopt titles and train for titles, and educate myself, as well as serving through just the actions that I feel drawn towards. So I do hold the title of Hareas to Hecate Propolo Synodia, which I, was consecrated to through Mount Nissa Mystery School, where I, studied and learnt and dedicated myself to training. And there are also, there's also work I'm doing on the comedic side of things, with what Polixena has been working on. She's not here, but I've been involved in the work that she's been doing to develop a sort of educational space for people who want to learn more about Kemetic religion and priesthood, essentially. And those are like formal ways I can engage in service. But like, for example, I spoke about being a counselor, and I think being a counselor doesn't need like the same, like it's not the same as me calling myself a hiatus. It's like being a counselor is something I do for my career, for something that I'm doing my master's degree on. But it's also something I started because of my desire for service. And it's like, it's very intertwined and can't be separated, and also I don't need to go around saying that I do it for Hecate. It's just something I do for Hecate. And I think over time, a lot of my devotions to my gods have revealed the ways that I want to serve them and serve my communities. I do resonate with scribal related things. I resonate with healing. I resonate with priestesshood, with oracularship, with music, with art, like all of these things. And I think the combination and like constant weaving and deepening of all of these are really cool. I kind of like just rambled there, so maybe hopefully that made sense. Gwen, you shared some thoughts, so thank you for sharing. For you, service is trusting yourself and serving a community and guiding people to the worship of the gods you're dedicating your life to. You don't need to know everything. There is always more to learn, and it's a sense of understanding that it's guiding them in whatever context, whether that's as oracle or priestess, etc. Growing just as your community is. You've recently made your own space like this dedicated to Apollo and Dionysus, so this gives you more inspiration. And you would say that your relationship with service is a devoted one. It's figuring out the role you play and what service looks like to you. That this was always a path you were meant to walk with them. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. You're welcome, Dimitra, and I'm glad that you enjoyed the lecture and that you thought it was helpful and made you think of things that you would do. And yeah, cool that you're resonating with the roles of an artisan or an oracle who serves the community. Thanks, Rue. Yeah, it's like a thing I love talking about, the way that, you know, my life is service. It's like, it's not a separate thing that I can like distinguish. And I think it's a cool way to live. I'm very grateful for the way that I'm able to live. You're welcome, Gwen. Any final thoughts or questions to be shared in the chat? You're welcome, Nico. I'm glad it was insightful and gave you a lot to think about. And thank you again for providing your insights on oracles as well. Yes. Intertwining service into our lives. Doesn't have to be just one separate pathway. It's a big woven tapestry.